Welcome to the Five Phenomenon Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hayes, and coming up on today's episode, local film critic, local movie guru, friend of the podcast, and just general friend, Ted Haycraft. But first, what I watched this week. I'm still in that kind of a gray space where, even though the new year just passed, I'm still trying to catch up on other people's top 10 lists, where as I'm recording right now, the Golden Globes are tonight, but by the time this airs, the Golden Globes will have been passed, so you in the future know what I don't know. I think I've seen everything. The only significant thing I haven't seen, there's one foreign language film I forget, and 1917. I haven't seen 1917 simply just because it hasn't opened here yet. So I saw Transit. The streaming services have been very helpful. So Transit on Prime, I saw. I just saw Long Day's Journey tonight, last night. But the most interesting thing I saw this week actually was I watched Richard Jewell, and it went me down Olivia Wilde hole. And like one of my favorite performances of hers is the very misbegotten, unloved Tron Legacy. And I have the year of Disney for free through my cellular provider, and rewatched Tron. And besides it's 2010, so the de-aging between, like, say, that de-aging and The Irishman is very much more closer to PlayStation level graphics. Jeff Daniels is just very clearly dates, but I stand by my original reaction watching Tron, where it's a really well designed movie. It's really gorgeous looking, and the it's something to behold. It's kind of like a forgotten Blade Runner level of and I say this having never seen the original Tron, which I don't know if Sid Mead ended up working on the new one, but Sid Mead, who worked on Blade Runner, also worked on the original Tron. It's just a gorgeous aesthetic, and it's kind of annoying that more people, I guess, aren't talking about it. It's easy not to talk about the movie just because the story is very, very silly, and it just reiterates that my feeling that the worst thing that happened to Hollywood screenwriting was George Lucas saying in an interview that he liked a hero with 1,000 faces. So there's a lot of silliness in there, but as I mentioned, we're recording before the Golden Globes because tonight I have a tradition. It's mostly been a consistent tradition of drinking while watching the Golden Globes, and the award shows are increasingly, as I get older, I find them silly and short-sighted, and their judgments are wrong. So but the Golden Globes is the show where it seems like everyone's having fun, and most of it's because they're drinking, and this award show with most of it. So I've just always had that feeling since being of drinking age that this is my way of joining the party. So by the time you're listening to this, I might potentially have a bad hangover. So Ted Haycraft is today's guest. Basically, Ted is the exact type of person when I first started this podcast that I wanted on, because the basic barometer seems to be that the best interviews I've been getting out of people are the ones who most love movies, and Ted is always, just for me, been the model of real genuine movie love. We deep dive. He's also just one of my oldest friends, so conversations like that are a little easier just because just the friend barrier. I haven't had the last few conversations have been over Skype, so it's nice to also have a conversation in person. But also just Ted in general is he's one of the most infectious people to speak about movies I know. Like, people always want to see a movie after talking to him for the most part. Some people will roll their eyes. He used to have a reputation for liking too many movies. Back in the day, I remember one of my friends used to make fun of him for it, and we were all together after we saw the Thomas Jane Punisher. This would have been like 2003, 2004. And I still remember the pained look on Ted's face, where he's also a big comic book fan, so he's just like, he got out of the movie, it was a bad movie, and he just looked like he got punched in the gut, and he's like, they're going to have some extra features on the DVD that eventually comes from this movie. And I'm going to have to buy it. And I'm going to have to watch those features and then think, I should probably watch the movie again. And just the look on his face when he realized he had to watch a bad movie again, but the compulsion also that he had to watch a bad movie again. In many ways, that says as much as you need to know about Ted. The other day, my dad brought me a bunch of papers, just old papers, and it was ridiculous. So there was like a bunch of elementary school papers, and he brought me this Yankees coat that was my favorite thing when I was in second grade. But buried in there was he had it listed as my first issue of News for You, the magazine I wrote for as a teenager that you used to write for. And before we even knew each other, we were both had our bylines in there. And what was funny was, for shits and giggles, I looked at what you wrote in there, and it was your normal video watchdog that felt like it was rewritten by Jay Ditzer, our old editor, but your video column was a list of your top 10 movies, your favorite movies, and it's kind of amazing how little that list. It's changed a little. I've heard different mentions, but you come back to that list a lot.
Did you keep it, or do you have it handy?
I don't have it handy. I remember the one surprising one was Big Blue. I know you talk. We literally were just talking about Luc Besson and Leon 5 minutes ago. But your number one was still one that's been universally your number one, which is two movies.
Oh yeah, I have to default to those. I mean, here's the curse or the blessing or the whatever you want to call it. When people find out you're a movie obsessive, you're a critic, you're a fan or whatever, what's your favorite movie? What's your number one movie? What's the best movie of all time? You get that, and you're just like, how can you objectively, subjectively, emotionally, whatever, answer that thoroughly?
Well, condense a lifetime of movie going into just the one you saw.
And if the desert island disc, if that type of situation, or if somebody put a gun to my head, I have to go to 3 and 4 Musketeers from the mid 70s that Richard Lester did, because they just encompass everything I love about cinema. Is in those, and I cheat by putting them both in there because they're supposed to be one film,
right?
But Lester's, he's cutting it for the Salkin brothers. He says, if you want to get this out on your premiere date, we're going to have to cut this in half. I mean, there's no way I can get this whole thing done. But it was supposed to be a giant roadshow movie, and then Lester saw that he had to get that.
Well, you always say it combines everything you love about cinema, but like, what specifically is about that? Is it like adventure, star power? Because I mean, Lester's never been someone. It's like the sound design on there. When I saw it, you showed it to me. I don't remember that being like an enveloping of the senses type.
Well, yeah, but sound design is a big thing with what do you call it? The after the fact.
The ADR, the dubbing.
ADR. Lester is just he's constantly dubbing and post dubbing and ADRing, like the Faye Dunaway is carried in by small people. Is that the proper term? I know I don't think you're supposed to use the word midgets anymore, but they're back in the day they're carrying it in a cart. And then you hear these little voices going, "Oh, she's put on weight," and things like that. And he dubbed those in afterwards, for the humor. So a lot of the post dubbing is for jokes and for one-liners like that.
But what else in particular do you like?
Well, first of all, the one thing I love about it is the costume design. When you see Musketeer films before that, you see Musketeer films after that, they look like they're from a costume prop warehouse. They're shiny, they're immaculate, they don't mess up. They look like they were done off of a factory. What do you call it? Just by rote. And here they look very worn. They get flipped. They get messed up. They look like the actual things from the 16th century. So I just really love that. I love the, of course, you said the star power. You mean one of Charlton Heston's best performances, Cardinal Richelieu. You got Oliver Reed is just amazing as Athos. You just got all this big giant cast, And then he does like really weird things like Spike Milligan's in the thing. I mean, he shouldn't really be in there, but it's just wonderful to have him in there for a little bit of a weird Spike Milligan shtick.
So, do you remember when you first saw it?
Yes, saw it Washington Theater with a bunch of buddies, and we were so pumped up by it and entranced by it. When we came out of the theater, we were air sword fighting on the bicycle racks and jumping up and down and doing gymnastics and sword fighting because we were just waiting for, I think, our ride or for our parents to pick us up. I don't think this is 73, 74. It's right around the time a lot of us were getting our driver's license. I don't know if how we got there. But probably our parents dropped us off and picked us up, or maybe something like that.
This is Washington Avenue. Is this the one that's just right over here?
Washington Avenue, down close to 41 at Kentucky Avenue. Yeah.
Okay, so let's rewind even more back. Do you remember your first?
I can spend a whole hour on Musketeers if you want, but we got to come back and do Richard Lester podcast.
I actually have heard you go an hour on the Musketeers movies, but I mean, it's almost like I asked you a question and you answered it. Do you remember what your first movie was? In a theater.
Gosh,
in a theater.
That's so frustrating and it's sad because I would love to have. I've been keeping a journal now, and of course, a big chunk of it got stolen.
I remember when that got stolen. It was tragic,
heartbreaking, and I wish I had started doing this a long time ago. I actually have a scrapbook I was going to bring tonight and show it to you, where I have ticket stubs taped into the scrapbook, and one's from Taxi Driver.
Oh wow! Well,
anyway,
I've been doing a thing where I haven't done it yet, but I want to year by year. I have a ton of old ticket stubs saved, and I was going to put them on a piece of cardboard and frame them. And what's weird is tax write-offs. I write all my ticket stubs now go saved into my tax file now.
Right. But, yeah. Or if I get in for a screening or whatever, I don't have a stub for it, so
right.
It's real spotty now. But yeah, I kept every ticket stub from I never threw a ticket stub away, and if it did get thrown away, it was by accident. So, but I think since everybody's been doing that, like what their first film is, I think I want to piece. I've been trying to piece this together, and I think that I have a memory of Pinocchio, the Disney animated Pinocchio, and I have a memory of the Marlon Brando Mutiny on the Bounty, the ship on fire near the end, where they set the ship on fire. And I'm thinking I figured that out. That I looked it up. They were both the same year, like 62, 63. I forgot the year, but it was Pinocchio was on re-release. And my dad was working and going to school in Louisville, and so my mom had me at home as a little child. So my mom and I think there was a theater nearby the house, apartment I think we lived at. So I guess she would just take me to matinees. And so here I'm watching this giant Mutiny of the Bounty, as a little kid, not even knowing what I'm seeing. But I can remember that memory. It seems like I have those two memories, and that might be the earliest ones I have. Another thing I have is Dad, my father was convinced that his son needed to see Shane on the big screen. And
there you go. The movie I'm literally named for.
Exactly.
I'm very distinctly named for.
What's interesting is that I'm like, again, Shane, it's like 55, 50, I mean, it's like mid-50s, I think.
The funny story, my parents told me as I was growing up that my parents were both born in 51, and my dad said they named me Shane because Shane came out the year they were born, and when I looked it up later, it was 54, so it goes into the almanac of incorrect facts of my father's.
So, yeah, 54, so I'm like, how the heck is that possible? But apparently my dad was playing a drive-in, and I was always thinking it was Princeton, but now I'm thinking it's Mount Vernon, Indiana, or maybe Mount Vernon, Illinois, but I'm probably more practical Mount Vernon, Indiana, because that's closer by. And I was talking to a poster dealer one day at the Washington Square Mall, in Eastland Mall, when they would bring in vendors in the middle of, they may still do that, but this guy was selling one-sheets. And I bought a Bud Bedecker one sheet from him, and I was talking about Evansville and movies and stuff. And I brought about the Shane story. My dad wanted me to see this, and he took me to drive-in. And I remember, again, very vague memory of the kid yelling, "Shane, come back! Shane, come back!" And at the end of the film, spoiler alert. But
spoiler alert.
Yeah,
for the 70-year-old movie.
He goes, yeah, it was still playing the drive-ins. That kind of film would still be on a the third bill on a drive-in. And then somebody here in Evansville confirmed that for me. So apparently my dad, so I did. He took me all the way out of town, 45 minutes or hour or whatever, to see Shane on the big screen. And of course he wanted me to be. He kept on talking about we had to go see 2001: A Space Odyssey on the Cinerama screen.
Okay, this would be significant.
And
later.
I remember him talking about that. I don't know if we did or not. That's the weird thing.
Where would the nearest Cinerama screen be?
Well, Louisville. I think it was might have been. We had to go out of town for that if we had to. I think I saw Ben Hur on a Cinerama screen, this curved screen. It's not a Cinerama. It's not a true Cinerama film, but
have you ever seen a normal movie on a Cinerama screen? Because the ArcLight has the Cinerama.
Well, I said Ben Hur. I think would be that.
Okay.
It was I
was gonna say it's terrible. I hated when I watched them.
I was a little kid. But other than that, I mean, like I said, I can't really. I don't have a really. It was like, this definitely. It was like this James Bond film I saw the first one in the theater. It's all so messed into my mind. I know one story I always like to talk about is how I saw Bonnie and Clyde during its theatrical run or its extended theatrical run. And it was a film I probably shouldn't have saw at the age. I was born November 58, so this is 69, 70.
So you're 9 when you saw Bonnie and Clyde.
And my mom was worried I was getting too obsessive about it. In fact, I had the vinyl soundtrack to it, and she made me get rid of the soundtrack. I think this is how I remember it. Because I don't have the vinyl anymore. And I had the Mad Magazine parody. I had a paperback book on gangsters. Jack Kirby did a magazine on Days of the Mob. It was all in the air. Bonnie and Clyde started this whole thing about mobsters and obsession over it. And I got really into it. And I was like, why would she maybe get rid of a soundtrack to Bonnie and Clyde? So then I finally, Collector's Choice, I think, put out a CD of it. They just slapped the whole thing on a CD and put it out. And a few years ago, I bought it and finally found it and got it. There's dialogue snippets on the soundtrack, and there's one snippet. It's very, some of the sexual innuendo is on there. So I guess she thought I was just like maybe obsessing over the dialogue sequences on this vinyl soundtrack. That's the only reason I can think she had me get rid of that. But
were you just in your room playing this too loud, maybe?
I don't know.
Because I remember when I would have been older, but something like Pulp Fiction would have been mine, where the Pulp Fiction soundtrack had a bunch of dialogue snippets on that. Yeah, I would have been listening to it in headphones. My parents would have not noticed.
Yeah, no, I had no headphones back then. I was a little portable, mono record player or playing it in the living room, my dad's stereo, in the living room.
So you mentioned earlier that your dad said you had to see Shane. It was on the big screen, right? So
yes,
your dad was the main person taking you to movies.
Yeah, I can name different people that influence things that I obsess over, and I obsess over a lot of different things. But Dad is the number one guy. He loved films and he loved movies. And and I forget, I kept going, why did I watch Marnie as a little kid on TV? Why did I watch some of these films? Why did I see these at the drive-in? I remember, and I think I even was a little subconscious about kids were seeing Mary Poppins and Sound of Music and Disney movies, and I'm seeing these, I'm seeing Marnie and, Psycho and Bonnie and Clyde and things like that. And I'm like, why am I, and I finally remembered, especially when it was on television, we only had 3 channels.
Right.
And if Dad was home, Dad had sway on what we were going to watch.
Okay.
So then I guess and then to add to that, I guess I was a kid that would sit there and be quiet. Because I know my dad would have kicked me out of the TV area, watching area, if I was going to be sitting there, Dad, what's this? So I basically, I guess at a very young age, I was a 200% voyeur. I don't know, a video obsessive or TV watcher or movie watcher.
Well, it's also funny just because to this day, when we go see a movie together, I shush people, but you're the one that are just like, the minute someone's talking, it just drives you bonkers.
Yeah, I don't understand, especially when you're paying this much money for a ticket and then you just want to talk. That's a big thing with me. But yeah, so Dad, and I think we early on got TV Guide, and that we would go through it. It was a weekly Bible to go through and check out what movie. And I would read Judith Christ's column. Judith Chris had a column in the TV Guide every week about what movies were premiering or what movies to check out and watch. And
did you always have a TV in the house, or did you guys get one at a certain age?
I always had a TV, as far as I can remember. I always had, even back in Louisville, before I was even 5 years old, back even before.
Okay, let's rewind back. Where were you born?
My mom and dad were going to Georgetown, Kentucky, in Lexington, and, at Georgetown College in Georgetown, just outside of Lexington, Kentucky. And all of a sudden, mom's pregnant, so let's get married and have a child. And so I was born at Georgetown. We moved shortly to Louisville, and then we went out to Des Moines, Iowa. My dad was trying to be a salesman. That was
What was the timeline on this? Okay.
well. I'll get to that because back to Louisville, all before I was 5 years old. Got to Evansville. My schooling didn't start till I got to Evansville. So Georgetown, twice in Louisville and Des Moines were all like 1 year old, 2 year old, 58 to what 63. 64.
Do you remember any of this?
Yeah, I mean the Louisville stuff. The second time at Louisville, I have a very little memory of Des Moines, but not other than that. But like I said, I've been here since I started school in Evansville. So Evansville's, for lack of, it's my hometown.
You don't remember Louisville theaters, though.
No,
Not from
like I
then.
said, that just that Pinocchio and the Bounty images blazing in my brain. But that's
Why'd
about
you
it.
guys come here? Why'd you guys come to Evansville?
My dad got a job at Welborn Hospital, Welborn Baptist Hospital, as a medical technologist in the lab. Then he was there all the way till Welborn got bought into St. Mary's, and he actually worked on the St. Mary's campus for a while before he retired.
What kind of movies did you watch with your mom?
I don't remember mom. It's funny. I don't remember mom. Mom would be up in the kitchen, or mom would be. I don't know.
Was she was she
but-
much of a
but-
movie person? Was she much of a movie person?
Yeah, because we went to the drive-in a lot. We had a station wagon, and the girl. I have two younger sisters. They get in their PJs. We have pillows and blankets, and me, and mom and dad would go, and it'd be the three of us. I would stay awake and watch every single blasted thing that played. The girls would go to sleep, and maybe mom. I don't know. I don't remember. I just in the movie going and watching. Mom doesn't seem to factor in too much for me, but except. I love this story is because I think mom and I music she always had WJPS on the radio and playing AM rock and roll when we were driving around in the car all the time. But on a school night, I think we even skipped out of a school program maybe, but we went to Theater A to see the concert for Bangladesh with George Harrison and Bob Dylan before I was.
Before you were
before I was-
sufficiently introduced to.
But,
Did your mom get you into the Beatles?
no, that was my uncle, her brother, who was 14 younger, her half brother, stepbrother, and stepbrother, I guess. Right? No, because she was fully adopted. Anyway, but my uncle Bill, who's only her brother, who's only 5 years older than me, so he was the brother I never had, and anything that Bill did, I wanted to do, and Bill was super counterculture. But getting back to mom, I was going to say that it was just really cool. She took me to Bangladesh, and that was mom was always wanting to.
When did this have been?
When it came out in the theater.
That's what I mean. When did it come out?
1971, 72.
Okay.
I
So you're like
I'm bad at
13
dates.
or
I'm really
something
bad at dates. Sorry about that. And then, of course, now everybody looks it up on their phone. I like the scene in the Ben Stiller film While We're Young, where they just Adam Driver.
And it's like, no, let's remember it.
Let's just remember it. If we can't remember it, we can't remember it.
Yeah, and they just sit there.
Anyway, my mom and dad also took me to see Hair when I was about 10. I think it was a birthday gift. I was I think 10 years old.
Is there nudity in
There's
the
a
movie
full
of Hair?
frontal nudity, and I remember going. I was like, totally, like Tex Avery cartoon, and cover my eyes. And
I had a really funny experience recently showing Night of the Living Dead to my nephew, and I forgot there's nudity in there. And
One
just
of
when
the
that
corpses,
happened, he just like got up and like excused himself to the bathroom, and I was like, I hope he's going to the bathroom. Like, not to out my nephew on the internet.
Well, and so here, because my mom's a preacher's kid. My grandfather's a Southern Baptist preacher. So here I'm good. We're very active at church sometimes, and then all of a sudden I'm taken to see Hair. So you can imagine. And then my Uncle Bill, like you said, that's good. Uncle Bill, who got me into the music, and the Beatles. Bill was, because he was actually grandfather, the Baptist preacher, was also an Air Force chaplain, and they were stationed in England when the Beatlemania hit.
Oh, okay.
So Bill was right there, and my comic books also come from Bill. But he was 5 years older than me, and he was totally 110% into the counterculture scene. So his bedroom was just like a Shangri-La of counterculturalism.
Well, like besides the Beatles, what?
Well, anything.
Did he introduce you to Dylan?
He had Dylan. I'd go into his room, and there'd be all these albums, and there'd be Rampart magazines and National Lampoon magazines. He had comic. He was a typical guy that did the typical evolution of magazine buying. He went from comic books to Mad, and then from Mad he went to National Lampoon, and then from National Lampoon to the more esoteric and liberal, radical stuff like Ramparts and other things. So he kind of evolved where I just, I latch onto something and I just have to, I get really obsessive and I stay there and I have to have every aspect of it. But anyway, so I go through his albums and there'd be like, who's this? And I knew about Bob because of the Beatles, but there would be Beatles, Dylan, Hendrix, Cream, everything that you associate with the Six Doors. He got me a Doors cassette tape when I was a kid. He was trying to. Once I latched to the Beatles, I was very obsessive about it. So he would try to break me of my Beatles obsessiveness. And and he's an uncle. I mean, uncles. I know you buy gifts for your nieces and nephews. It's kind of buying gifts for your nieces and nephews is always kind of it varies from family to family. My grandmother, I think every once in a while go, now you need to buy Teddy, a gift or something. So so they were trying to break me by bills. He bought me Aqualung, Jethro Tull one year, and another time he bought me Soft Machine third.
Soft Machine.
Yeah, I'm in grade school, and he's trying to break me off my, just listen to the Beatles over and over again. Because as a kid, my love of music, my collection was basically Beatles and soundtracks. That was my music would be a whole other subject.
Well, speaking of soundtracks, where does Bond come into this? Because Bond's a big part of your early life. Yes, very big.
Well, John Barry, James Bond, Dad's huge. That's another good question. What was my first Bond film? And I know for sure The Diamonds Are Forever. I saw that with my friend Rod Willis. Parents dropped us off. I think we were late.
That would have been like 71, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's like, yeah. But I mean, that's just a solid memory. I think I may have saw Automatic Secret Service at the Victory Theater.
Really?
That's where we would have played, most likely.
When did the Victory stop showing movies before it started again?
Well, one of the last things I saw there was a Lee Majors Viking movie.
So I guess late 70s?
Late 70s, early 80s, maybe. They actually made it a multiplex, sort of. They put a couple of theaters upstairs.
And they took that out when they...
Yeah.
Because my first time I ever saw Casablanca was at the Victory. And it was in high school, too. I was late seeing Casablanca.
That was after the renovation?
Yeah. It would have been like a 99.
For those listening in, Victory Theater it was a Lowe's owned theater from the 40s. Lowe's owned. It was one of the big giant downtown theaters.
What was really fascinating to me when I moved to Austin is that it's a little more opulent, but the Paramount Theater in Austin, I think, looks a lot like the Victory too, which obviously makes sense because you have the giant one MIG movie house in every small town. So
yeah, there's of course it's the history of the theaters here is really interesting, and we got a couple of experts here in town that have done talks on it. It's fascinating. They actually I just recently did a historic walk around town. They took us all and where all the sites were, a guided walk. And
can you do a short version of it? Obviously Alhambra would have been one of the
Alhambra, yeah, but that goes back to the Nickelodeon days almost, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure. And there was Lowe's owned the Majestic, the Victory, and there was was there I don't think there wasn't a Fox here, but yeah, it's really interesting. It's fascinating. Of course, by the time I'm here in Evansville, the neighborhood theaters, Ross and Washington, the suburb theaters start to pop up, and then we finally get to the duo ones, like Carol's Twin and Washington Square, the pill look like pill boxes, but they have two screens on each side, the lobbies in the middle, and then show up and then the Steelers.
Well, on the air, my talk with our mutual friend Aaron Smith, I didn't realize that. I always thought that. The Steelers lucked into the land on Showplace East, but he was like, no, that was a drive-in.
Oh yeah, it was Evansville Drive-In.
I didn't know
Well, that's another huge part of my film going history because I lived in the neighborhood behind there. Good Shepherd School's back there, and it was
So was that one of the main like your main drive-through? Drive-through.
it was
Drive-in?
Evansville Drive-In was one of the main drive-ins on the east side, on the edge of the east side of Evansville, and but I mean, should we? We kind of just dived in on all this. So should we establish, we're both of us grew up in Evansville, Indiana, what size city it is, and
You can.
I don't know. Anyway,
I know.
I just people going.
It's been so inconsistent whether this is an Evansville based podcast or not.
Yeah, of course. A lot of times I get people they get it mixed up with Evanston. I don't know. It's Evansville.
Well, we also the joke in the Simpsons movie of Springfield, what state it's in, like it applies to Evansville because there's like about 6 Evansvilles in the United States, something like that. There's a few.
Well, it's such a weird history. Evansville is in a weird pocket of Indiana, and we could that could be an interesting.
I think I've cited this before, but we are the 200th biggest media market.
Really?
No, I thought I was gonna have you back me up on that because we should also establish we'll get into this later, but you were a TV critic for WFIE, and you've worked at WFIE for a while. The NBC affiliate in Evansville.
Right. We're like the 101st market.
Okay, it wasn't that low. I knew we were like on the one of the 100 or 200 edge or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is a big difference.
I've forgotten that. So what were we saying? Oh, Evansville Drive-In. So here's the thing about Evansville Drive-In. That's where Showplace East now, and Showplace East is probably the main theater now here in town on the east side. And if you're going to get any kind of art films or exclusive runs, they're usually always at the east. But the drive-in, Evansville Drive-In was there, and each drive-in had its own personality in Evansville. And I loved all the different ones, but this one had a little go-kart track for a while, and they also had a sawdust.
Isn't there behind East right now? There's that go-kart place.
Yeah, that's gone now. They actually tore that down, but that had nothing to do with the drive-in.
That was the miniature golf course too.
So you could the parents in the neighborhood. I remember going up to the drive-in and paying for my ticket without a car because the concession stand had attached to it a row of theater seats, several rows of theater seats and audio speakers inside in an indoor setting in the concession stand.
Was that common?
See, and I always forget why. I have to always ask these guys. There's these older generation of movie fans in Evansville, and they always give me the best explanation for it. I forgot why, but it was you could get out of your car and go in there and sit in there. Maybe if your car heater wasn't working, or if it was too hot outside, or you didn't want to be crowded. I don't know. There was a really good reason. You used to have crying rooms in theaters.
For babies?
Yeah, Ross Theater had one.
Not for if you were too emotional in a movie.
No, it was for the mom or dad to take their kid crying or making a noise up into this one room that was had a big window, but it would get the kid the noise out of the theater.
All I'm picturing is the Peter Bogdanovich movie Targets right now. Like that's my I don't know why crying room and all this stuff there. I mean, there's been plenty of movies that take place at a drive.
So basically, we could go see all these movies at the drive-in without having an automobile, and I ended up being 16.
Was it cheap?
Well, it was the same price. I think they charged the same price as a kid or adult. And I think the first time my parents knew that we were going in and paying for the ticket and going in there and then walk home. But we got to a point, and I hate to admit this, but we would sneak in. We started sneaking in. Now I don't know.
You can admit that.
Well, I just don't. Where were my parents thinking I was at? I guess I'm going to be at Mark's house all night or something. Or something. And there was a soybean. There was one side of the drive-in that there was no fence. There was a soybean field, and it was like a strategic army operation to get. We halfway run across the soybean field and duck, and get up and go. And you just like playing the Great Escape music. The whole time. And there was a security guard, but he was named Dewey, and he was this old guy with a hearing aid, and you could evade him very easily. So we just
evade him as in sneak by him, or he would
and then. We just pretend that we're here with some parents' cars or something, or we paid a ticket to get in. And they never asked. I guess they never did ask us for our ticket stub or whatever. And so I saw a lot of films that way, and I saw a lot of films that I shouldn't have seen.
How often a week would you go?
I think it was in the summertime probably, and I don't know. That's a good question. I would it just all blurs together, but I would say like the Flying Stewardess type movies or the Easy Rider. You know, I weird thing about Easy Rider because it came back later. Oh, that's why I know that song. And but Easy Rider and Robert Red early Robert post Butch Sundance Robert Redford films and Clint Eastwood films and all these things I just saw over and over again multiple times. The Leone films, which we haven't talked about.
That
Leone,
was going to be my big question.
but
next.
that's
So
one reason I was able to really become obsessive because I got to see them multiple times at this drive. So that was a big education right there, just to be able to have that access to a drive-in without an automobile. And my parents let me. My parents gave me a lot of freedom. I don't know. I think it was more they knew I wasn't going to be a troublemaker. I knew I was semi-responsible, and I wasn't. And I was, I was going to see the movies. I wasn't going out to drink. I wasn't going out sneak out to do this or that or these vices. I wanted to see movies.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when my friend got me the job at Showplace, and I got to be able to watch movies on film multiple times like that, obsessively over and over. Like, I just remember thinking, the luckiest. That was like the most magical thing. So I alluded to earlier. Would Fistful of Dollars be the first Leone movie you saw?
Oh gosh, see here again. I wish I had kept.
Would it have been in theater or on TV? Do you know? I mean, obviously you're trying to recollect.
No, I would have saw them at the theater drive-in. I don't think some of these films, especially in Evansville, their first runs were at the drive-ins, like High Plains Drifter. Dad and I saw that at the Evansville drive, the family drive.
I mean, drive-ins then have they're supposed to, in theory, be second-run movie.
Well, yeah, you always they typically. Well, I need to read more about it. I've come across some books, and I like I said, there's some guys from Evansville that just really know their history really well about that. But it was not uncommon to have first run films go straight to the drive-ins in certain areas. So my dad loved the Leone films, and this is just all vague. Trying to
would he see them first and then have you?
He probably some of those he would go on his own. He'd go see some films on his own because I remember he told me he my dad goes, I had to go with a guy from church, Mr. Alcorn, to go see Thunderball, and he was running late, and it was just and Mr. Alcorn was probably just a casual moviegoer. My dad, I guess I get my seriousness, I like my credit watching. I guess everything I get it from Dad. He treated this very seriously, or at least that's what I picked up from him. So he said I actually went and saw Thunderball again because we missed like 5 minutes of it or something, and back then. If you missed 5 minutes of it, that was it. You didn't go back and see it again. Or even today, most people go see one movie, and they see it one time, and then they...
Well, this is also post-Psycho, where it's not like you can watch the movie. You can stay and watch the movie on a loop.
Well, as I was going to say, what you got back, going back to Bond, Diamonds are... And we never did finish the Bond thread. The Diamonds, we missed. We got there late. My parents, whoever was driving us, got us there late. So we were able to stay and watch the beginning of it, the next showing. It was, I don't know how close the loop was, but we were able to stay and watch the beginning of what we missed before we got picked up and taken home.
Well, I mean, you always they try to say that Hitchcock made a big deal about kicking people out, but I don't know how really well is that enforced on every theater. I mean, maybe maybe
across
Psycho,
the country,
but
I mean, in New York, I think with the premiere dates and stuff, they were really that was a big shtick about that. But yeah, but it was I think you even mentioned on another podcast how. Movies would just run back to back all the time, especially the grindhouses in Times Square, and people would just drop in the middle of it and then leave once they got to the point where they came in.
Well, we went to the Belcourt a few weeks ago, and I mean, I used to make a practice of like buying one ticket and staying there the whole day to like see 2 or 3 movies, and your eyes are widening right now with me saying that, and like I was like when we got,
you're old enough to know better.
No, I worked at a movie theater. I knew that if you wouldn't make a ruckus, like no one cared. You bought your ticket for the day. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we were gonna try to see was it Parasite and Lighthouse we saw that day,
right.
and Yeah, I looked at you like, should we buy one ticket or two? And you had the exact same wide-eyed look at me as you did now.
Well, I mean, it's the Belcourt, it's nonprofit, and I'm an
Sure.
old man now, and I respect. I mean,
Yeah, someone lectured me on pirating movies to buy instead of you buy them, and I immediately regret it. I was like, you're right. I can rent. I'm an adult
yeah,
as long as I got a job.
yeah, exactly. So okay, we're getting all threads going everywhere here. Let me get back to Bond. I wanted to say, so I don't think I saw Thunderball. I remember my dad telling me about the Thunderball story. I want to think I saw You Only Live Twice because I can remember the scene where Bond has he's tied up and the female captor, she has him and or Bond. I'm getting it all mixed up, but Bond basically starts to cut her dress with a blade, and right when they get near the rear end, it cuts. There's a cut to another scene. And of course, as a little kid, I'm like, ooh, and I think that's why I think I saw that in the theater.
When you were a kid seeing a Bond movie, was it as risque as they make?
It was risque. It was action filled. It was funny. Everything that the blockbusters are today, the Bond films were in the '60s. They were the cutting edge.
Well, I mean, just they treat like when I was a kid, they treated it like it was still Playboy magazine or something.
Yeah, well, there were the very last Fleming stories were serialized in Playboy, and anytime there was a Bond film out, there was a pictorial done for it, and the whole philosophy was kind of crossbred between the Bond films and the Playboy magazine and that kind of thing. And like I said, in On Her Majesty's Service, I think I remember asking my dad. This is why I think I saw it in the theater. Of course, it had to be because it didn't premiere to high school. I know all about the television premiere, which was a big debacle. But my dad was. I go the opening credits. If you for those who've seen On Her Majesty's Secret Service, I think they were worried that people were going to go, is this the same Bond series? Because they had now a totally new guy playing him, not Sean Connery. So they had film clips of the previous films in the title credit sequence. And I remember leaning over to my dad and go, are those scenes from the other Bond movies, Daddy? Or, like that, and then...
Did he shush you?
Yeah, then we got quiet again. Because, I could only do that once or twice during a movie, maybe. It had to be very, strategically timed and at a certain level of audio level.
This is right after they didn't do this to the other guy or whatever was the last line.
Yeah, this never happened to the other fellow. Then it goes to the great John Barry score, my favorite Bond theme, which has no lyrics. And then the sequence going to Piz Gloria, to Blofeld's hideout in the Alps, and the John Barry just grand music and the shot of going up to the Alps, up the what do you call it, I can't think of
the lift.
Yeah, but it's it's a bigger one. It's where people get inside and go up. I can't think of the title name of that.
Don't fight it, Ted. The name's not going to come.
So anyway, I remember as a kid, it was overwhelmed, and it being overwhelming as a little kid. So that means I must have been a big screen in a bit darker theater to at that age to be overwhelmed. And the John Barry music, that's right, because I think between the Morricone of the Leones and John Barry the Bonds, I just had. I just opened. That was my gateway to soundtrack music and listening to soundtracks and music and how it was instrumental into making a film so even better than it is. And so my collection as a kid, like I said, consisted mostly. My pop music was mostly Beatles, but the other stuff was mostly soundtracks, and it was mostly Barry and Morricone.
We never actually finished the where First Leone movie was.
Well, I think they all melted together. I think I could have been the first time I saw them was all three together, because
that's a long sit.
Well, it's even longer with Hingham High thrown in the mix.
Which one?
Hingham High, his first American Western he did after the three Leones.
Oh, you're talking about Eastwood.
Yeah.
I was talking about Leone. Or I got confused. I was like, is there a Leone movie I don't know about?
Well, yeah, but they would they mix and matched the Leone films. The first two together, all three of them together. I have a one sheet that says like "Spend the Night with Clint Eastwood."
Was Eastwood the gateway to Leone? I mean,
yes, exactly. Well, as a kid, I was thinking, I didn't know about directors per se at that. I got caught on pretty early, but to me, it was all Clint Eastwood was cool. The action was cool. Everything was about this film was cool. But, you pretty much just laid it all on Clint as the focal point. But I had a cowboy book, Western cowboy movies book, and it had a chapter on spaghetti westerns or Leone. I started saying, and then I finally started thinking, wait, it's because of this Sergio Leone guy. Oh, the music is this Ennio Morricone guy. Oh, I started, and even though on my 8th grade term paper, our teacher had us do this term paper with footnotes and a bibliography and a whole spiel, and I convinced her to let me do it on Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, I have a really fond memory of freshman year doing mine on Kubrick. So what was cool about it specifically?
Well, there was some. Quentin Tarantino goes into this about how, especially Once Upon the West, you could see how a film is directed. If you want to know how.
Well, no, not what's cool about it now. What was cool about it then?
Well, back then it was just seeing westerns on television and seeing John Wayne, and this is potbelly old man John Wayne, Rio Lobo era, True Grit era of John Wayne. I'm also here's this cool guy. He's got stubble beard. The poncho was so striking to me. It's actually a serape, technically. He's smoking these little tiny cigars. He has these one-line quips. The music would do these musical stings when he would say a quip. There's these close-ups, and it was dirty and weird. And the faces were strange. It didn't look. Now I look back. It's not Hollywood casting. Out of L.A.
Right.
You got gypsies and Spanish locals and all kinds of people being thrown in the background. It seemed like there were flies buzzing around. It seemed like it was dirt. There was no greenery. There was no Native American Indians. It just had it was just so bizarre and different and hip, and it just seemed like it really hit. I didn't know this time, but it was really hitting the zeitgeist at the time, and plus it was not black and white. It was like this whole. What exactly is this guy doing? I was so obsessed with that. There was a store called Artist Market, I think it was called, in Washington Square Mall, one of the first enclosed malls in Indiana, historically, I think.
Really?
And they had some in the corner. They had some, lack of a better word, hippie clothes or bohemian clothes, and I would go there every time we were there just to see if they had a serape or a poncho. I wanted a poncho so bad. I couldn't wait to get stubble on my chin, and I wanted to smoke these little short cigars. And I still had 12-inch G.I. Joes, and there was Mark's Toys put out a line of 12-inch figures too, Johnny West and these Knights of the Round Table. And I had a lady down the street make me a poncho, homemade, stitched a poncho to fit my 12-inch G.I. Joes, so he could be the man with no name. The paperback books came out.
Were there any action figures or toys? Any
no,
stuff?
The only thing was there was the paperbacks. They this one small paperback company put out a movie tie-in for a few dollars more and Good, Bad, and the Ugly. They didn't have one for a fistful of dollars. I figured that out later, but I didn't know at the time, and it baffled me. Where's the fistful of dollars paperback? And then they were able to commission a series of news stories with the man with no name. Now this is not great literature, but I love the stuff. And I think Tuco came back from the Good, Bad, and the Ugly in one of them, and so I was so obsessive about it. They would come out with a different cover with a different edition, and I would buy that if I saw it. And so I read those, then I bought the Fistful of Dollars soundtrack, which was on RCA, and then I got the Good, Bad, and the Ugly, which was on a UA label. But my favorite one was $3 More of the trilogy. That's my favorite of the three, personal favorite. I know Good, Bad, and Ugly is such a great film, but I just love the chemistry between Lee Van Cleef and Eastwood and that, and the watch, and El Indio is the bad guy, and so I couldn't. It took me forever to find the soundtrack for that. There was like a Hugo Montenegro version, cover version of it. He was kind of a big band type guy, middle of the road music composer guy that did cover albums of. There was like a lot of people that would want the Morricone music for the movies, they would buy this one album that had music from all three of them, but it was Hugo Montenegro's versions.
No.
You know, and I wanted the original thing. I had to have the
Sure.
the true stuff.
So, was it you or your friend Jim Alexander that used to tape Bond movies on TV, but you would do the audio tapes of them?
No, actually, we both did audio taping. Again,
This would have been pre-VCR, obviously.
yeah. Well, here again, I think this could be a whole, you know, several podcasts about talking about the, you know, I don't want to be the, get off my lawn, you know, kind of, and you hear, you know, you always hear about old people talking about whack in our day, this and that. But there was something about, there were no video games, there was no internet, there was no home video, there was no cable, you know, there was none of that. And so I think that's one reason comic books were a big thing back then. And another thing about movies is that when you became a movie fan back then, the merchandising was few and far between. So the best thing you could do was get a soundtrack if there's a soundtrack put out, and get the either the movie tie-in or the movie what do you call it? It was based on a book, so it's the original book but with a movie tie-in cover, or an actual brand new or a book that was written adapted from the screenplay with, you know.
Yeah, I'm a little more familiar with those, but although being said, I've probably never actually read one.
And, yeah, and then if you were real lucky, you might be able to, you know, talk to somebody at the theater that would give you the poster or an 8x. You could find an 8x10 somewhere, but that was so rare. And so you wanted that movie. You wanted it, you know, you were obsessed about it. You thought about it. You had it in your head. And so I got a cassette tape player when I was in 5th grade. Jim, my best friend, he had a cassette. He had reel to reel. He was even more hi-fi. And we started, I don't know if we got an idea from somebody else, but we both started taping things off the television. So I had cassette tapes of Fistful of Dollars, Few Hours of Work, and Then the Ugly. And I would play those over and over again. You know, of course, I had the visuals in my head. And that was just another way to have a piece of that movie. But now, you know, now we have the Blu-rays and we have the one-sheets, we have the T-shirts, we have everything, the action figures and blah, blah, blah. But that was that was one way to get to it. In fact, it was so funny when my dad, after my mom moved away, my parents got divorced, Dad moved out, Mom moved away, Dad moved back in.
When was this?
This would have been, I was like late high school, early going into college. Dad moved.
So late 70s?
Yeah, I graduated high school in 77. Dad moves back in and he sees where I'm audio taping, and this all it was just basically putting my microphone up to the speaker of the television, and so my sisters would walk in the room or someone I'd go spastic because, you know, they didn't want to give any extra noise. So my dad saw that and he goes, "Hey, that's a good idea. I like to tape some of these like musical shows and variety shows and stuff like that too, that you couldn't, you know, find anywhere on a record or anywhere." So he takes it to the TV repair shop down the road and put an audio jack into it, and then we got a cord. And we just went straight into the TV.
This is like whenever my friends used to bootleg punk shows around town, and whenever someone would let us plug straight into the board.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so I'm just plugging straight into the television and, you know, taping some. And it's already, you know, this is early '80s, right before the video VCR started coming into play. One of the last major things I audio taped was PBS had gained the license to play The Prisoner. My favorite TV show.
I don't want to jump too far ahead, but you know, even though we had shared the byline forever, you and I, we didn't meet. It was years before we met, but I distinctly remember I was in college watching a movie at Forum 1, and when I was in the class with our now mutual friend Eric Braceman teaches, and I remember hearing some guy like a few rows in front of me talking about prisoner references on The Simpsons, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Ted Haycraft.
Yeah, so I audio made a big deal because they would play it 3 times a week, the same episode, and so I made a big deal to audio tape The Prisoner because I wanted all 17 episodes. And
Wait, Prisoner, what did it air on initially?
Initially, it was a CBS summer fill-in for the Jackie Gleason show on a summer.
Did they air all the episodes?
Except for one, the cowboy, the Western episode. There's all this theory that they didn't air because it was they thought it was some kind of protest against the Vietnam War. Subtext going on in that, but there's some different theories why it didn't air, but That was one reason.
I'd probably be remiss if I didn't talk about. So, your mom, you said your grandpa was a Baptist preacher, or
So yeah, my grandfather became he was in the Air Force. My mom's father. He was in the Air Force, and then he got out of the Air Force and went to Southern Seminary in Louisville. Got his whatever you get to be a Baptist preacher. His first church that he gets commissioned at, I think this is correct, is and then he met my grandmother, and she already had my mom. He adopted my mother. Of course, we didn't know this. This is a long story. This is an interesting story. We didn't know about this till I was 40 years old, that my mom was adopted. And we don't even know if my mom knows. And my mom might have went to her grave not knowing. I don't know. It's really weird. But anyway, so he marries Polly Porter. He marries Pauline, my grandmother, and officially adopts my mom. And they get a church in Litchfield, Kentucky. Well, who happens to live in Litchfield, Kentucky, but a guy named Hugh Macbeth Haycraft, my father. And the minute my dad saw Mom, he fell instantly in love.
Well, I wanted to go down this road. That is a fascinating story, but it was more about your, as a child, you were relatively of the faith of Christianity, or specifically baptism.
So the Baptist, that's plays into my pulp culture upbringing too. Because at one point I thought I was going, like Martin Scorsese, I thought I was going to go into the ministry.
Like full blown?
Yeah. I thought I was going to go in and be a youth minister or do something at some capacity.
Well, there was a giant trip you took out west for.
The day after graduating high school, I went out to the summer of '77.
Oh yeah.
And 1977, for those movie people out there, you know what I'm referring to, what summer that was. I go out the minute I'm on a van the next day after graduating from high school to do mission work for the Yaqui Indians in downtown Tucson, Arizona.
Well, I know because just the other day you were saying like I'm a Close Encounters guy over Star Wars because of this trip.
Well, no, it's not because of the trip. I was even with, I call this my Holy Joe period, where I was really involved with church. So secular stuff took a back seat for a while, but I was pretty far advanced movie goer, and I'm 19, I think, when Star Wars comes out, and I was very aware of American Graffiti, and of course I come back from that mission work, and the first night I'm back, my dad goes, "I'm taking you to see Star Wars," because I hadn't seen it yet, and that's the first thing I did when I got back into Evansville and with my dad, and then Close Encounter comes out, and of course, everybody assumes that I was a huge Star Wars. I was a big fan. I saw it several times. I bought some of the comic books and the merchandising. I was caught up in the fever, obviously, but I wasn't. I'm not. It's so funny that how many younger generations that came to it much later are more obsessive than people that were there at the time.
My brother.
And of course I have a big theory that George never intended to be beyond that first one, but that's another whole different podcast.
Sure.
But so I saw Close Encounters, and I just really dug into Close Encounters. Just Spielberg's. I was a huge Spielberg fan. Jaws. Speaking of Jaws, it's audio taping. Back in the day, they would announce this is the last time this film will be in the theater before it goes to network showing. They would actually do that in the poster, in the ads. Like Butch and Sundance, remember, this is the last time you get to see it in the theater because it had been bought for network showing.
Just like they would do for years with it's coming out on VHS or something like that.
Yeah, so that's parallel. So they did that with Jaws. So I knew this was the last theatrical run of Jaws. And I went over to Washington Square Cinema, and by this time I was on a first-name basis with most of the managers. Jeff Lyons at Channel 14, he goes, "I don't understand how you never worked in the theater, Ted." And I'm like, "I know, that's weird. Why I never did do official work in the theater, but I knew all the managers, and the managers knew me. And of course, like a lot of times they didn't like seeing me because I'd go, it's out of frame, it's out of focus. Can you fix this? Can you do that? Because I was just so particular." And this is back in the 35 millimeter days when all kinds of things could go wrong,
right,
as you well know.
Yeah, I was a projectionist. Yeah.
I actually went to the manager, Carol's twin, and I said, hey, would you mind if I came out on a matinee and I brought my audio cassette tape player in and audio tape Jaws? And she said, okay. She let me do that. So
You asked to pirate audio pirate the movie.
I mean, I didn't pirate it anywhere other than just for myself. So I'm audio taping Jaws. I'm sitting on the floor of the first row with my little cassette deck. It was a more modern one since the fifth grade one, but I had a little speaker out, I had a microphone out, and I'm recording Jaws in the theater audio tape.
I don't know.
Officially okayed by the manager, you know.
What was funny, the thing that comes to mind is I want to say the very, very first draft of Back to the Future that was written properly in like 3 years after this, like 80 or something like that, opens with Marty pirating Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which, I mean, it was a Spielberg movie at that point, but that was in joke, and I don't know where movie piracy was at that point, but...
And of course, Jaws, to me, the reason I love Jaws so much is you know, and I think everybody probably agrees with this. Or so I guess most of the movies go because they're getting scared and jump out of their seats. But I love the characters and the dialogue. So you know, an audio cassette tape of it was great because I could hear all this great Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss and gotta get a bigger boat and stop playing with your stuff, Hooper, and just all that all these great lines that I love to hear over and over again. So and it was a thing to do till VHS video VCRs came along. And
do you remember the first VCR?
Yeah.
Wait, were you beta?
No, never was a beta, and I had a giant pneumatic one. The top it would open up on the top. Well, actually, what happened was a friend of ours, his parents bought one, and his parents went to Paris for the summer. So we took over this guy's house, and we paid for cable, and we had a VCR and we had cable, which had WTBS and WGN Chicago, and all this stuff, and we all took turns. Like okay, Jim's recording this science fiction film on Monday, so that's taken. Oh, Wednesday night, Richard Lester's The Bed Sitting Room is on. I've never seen it. Gotta get that. So, I'm taping that on Wednesday. And it was a co-op. Basically, it was a co-op VCR house recording all this stuff that we accessed. We also paid for HBO, I believe. And then at one point, we actually did our own film festival of all our. We taped, one of the Bond movies with the extra footage off ABC. Oh, it was Jaws with the extra footage off of its network run. And then we had stuff off HBO, some Bond films. We had some other stuff, and I put a little booklet, a little program book, and it was like started at in the afternoon. And
is this college?
Yes, this is during college.
So you went to UE and
you went to the University of Evansville from '77 to '81.
Okay. When you started a film club there?
No, there was the union board had its the films that were shown for the students, which they still do across campuses nowadays. In fact, now they do DCPs and they do films that are still in the theater.
Like
USI does that, and I think U of E, some theater. I mean, because of home video. I think a lot of campuses have cut back on that.
That makes sense.
But in '77, we had 60 millimeter setup, and we had Kerry Minton was running it for freshman sophomore year. John Baker ran it the third year, and I ran it with another guy my senior year. And we had popcorn, and we would actually let other people outside the campus come in, which it turns out I don't think we were supposed to do, but we did. We did for a while, and we got CinemaScope lenses, so we would show films in widescreen. And we actually got to the point where we thought, wait a minute, it takes a while to get that scope lens on because we would show trailers. I mean, when I said Carrie and John and Evansville people would know some of these guys, we were all film fanatics. I met Carrie and Dr. Roth, the teacher who taught film classes. They're the first night on campus. Jim got a dorm. I still stayed at home. We walked over to see the first film. It was The Beguiled and Play Misty for Me or something. A couple of Eastwood films, and one I had never seen before.
Which is funny because just before we started recording, we exchanged our late Christmas presents, and Ted bought me a Clint Eastwood Blu-ray with 4 movies, including Play Misty for Me and The Beguiled on there.
Yes, and Dr. Roth is an interesting character. He did his doctorate thesis on semiotics and Leone films or something like that.
That seems like a fast okay.
Yeah. So. Anyway, I have him on an audio tape, so I'm going imitating Arch Stanton. That's Good Bad Ugly fans would know what that's from. So anyway, yeah, Union Board. So it was great because we figured out okay, we wanted to show trailers. We're going to show next week. We would show these things weekly, and Carrie and John did a Bond festival all week and played every single James Bond film for the whole week. Carrie would bring in De Palma and Leone and Lester, and it was basically it was an excuse to bring these films that you wanted to see or you hadn't seen, and kids came, but then you would show recent stuff like we showed Alien not too long after it played in the theaters. We showed an Amy Irving movie called Voices. The nurses loved. She's a deaf girl who wants to be a dancer, and Michael Onkian wants to be a singer. And we had so we had current stuff mixed with the older stuff, and then cult classics. And then it was doing so well when I got a hold of it. I got to do whatever I wanted to do on Tuesday nights, and then we did the more popular stuff on Thursday nights. So I did some really crazy programming. I did like Dark Star with Zardoz. One night. And
yeah. Okay.
And then another night I did How I Won the War and Let It Be.
Okay. What was did your Lester love come around college? Or
No, well, it goes back to when I saw Hard Day's Night and Help on television.
I do want to rewind back. It was on television. You saw it,
and I knew. I just loved. I wasn't aware of French New Wave at the time, or the jump cutting and crazy editing, and really probably wasn't tuned to some of what was going on in commercial filmmaking. I mean commercials and TV commercials at the cutting edge commercials. But to see Hard Day's Night and Help, and I guess, again, I just, everybody has their own sensibilities they're attuned to. And I started, and this happened with comic books too, I started getting into the behind the scenes and who is doing this and how is this done and why does this look different? There's something different about the Leone films or Lester films that look different than a Andrew McGoglin film with John Wayne, or something like that, or Henry Hathaway, and of course Hitchcock stuck out too at the time. But so I had what else was I 3 or 4 Musketeers. Somebody I was really proud of. Like I brought in Butch and Sundance the early days, which is Richard Lester, and showed it first, and then we showed Butch and Cassidy.
I've never seen it. What is? How's
it's
it?
a prequel.
No, I know it's a prequel.
It's okay.
How is it?
It's a mid-range Lester. There's a lot of cool things in it. It's no way you can live up to the iconic stature of the George Roy Hill film.
Okay.
But it's fun. It's and William Catt and Tom Tom Berenger. They really look like the guys, younger Newman and Redford, and Peter Weller shows up in the film, and all kinds of little things in it. But anyway, so I had a lot of fun. So we made so we had the trailers, and we would actually put black leader. We would edit the trailers with black leader to the first reel of the film. So that gave us the black leader gave us time to get the CinemaScope lenses on and twist it on and fixed. So that way. We didn't have to stop down, or it was took us forever to get the lens fixed. So we thought this through and actually try to make it as savvy as and smooth as we could. And we had 2 projector systems, so we would try to change over as smooth as we could from one projector to the other. And
these are 60 millimeter though.
Yeah, 60 millimeter. It was so we and the first time we saw Once Upon a Time in the West, the longest version at that time in 60 millimeter was just mind-blowing because I had never really, my history of seeing that film is weird. I don't know if I actually saw it till I got to college, knowing that this is going to be the a magnum opus, coming out of the trilogy of the Man with No Name ones. So that was a revelation.
So when did you start the TV station?
1980. I was still in college. Jim Alexander, my best buddy. We've been 50 years now. We've been friends. We met in 5th grade. He applied for a weekend film room at 14, and he didn't like the hours. So I quickly went out there after him and took the job. And it was weird hours because you'd stay late Saturday night and you had to come back in early Sunday morning for the Abbott and Costello Theater.
So film room meaning you'd have.
What was interesting was, well, first of all, there would be films I had to load up for the newscast, and there was a telescene, and a telescene is like 2 projectors and a slide drum all hooked together with a series of mirrors, and then they would have to flip flop the mirrors to see which projector or slide drum they wanted at the time during the newscast. And and the mirrors were in the center, and the projectors and the slide drum were shooting into the mirrors. And so I had to load the slide drum up, and slide drums would be when you have a visual graphic over the newscaster's shoulder, that would be a slide keyed in over them.
Is this why, like on old TV thing, you actually see the image slide back and forth?
Sometimes, yeah. If it wasn't, if they didn't do it properly, and then some commercials will still slides and audio tape, and then films would one projector would be devoted to the commercials on film, and the other projector would be devoted to news footage, and then of course we got to a point where we got videotapes, so the news footage was lesser and lesser on film. So I would go in there and I would take care of that during the newscast, but also my other job was to load up the movies, Abbott and Costello, Superman, the great movie on the 10:30 on Sunday nights or whatever. Load those up, take them down, and then if they had been edited, cut for time for commercials, I had to go get the footage that was cut out, put it back in, hot splice it back in, and then pack it up and have it ready shipped Monday morning to the next station that would play it. Then we were on a live bicycle.
Wait, when they cut for time, they would do it station by station?
Yes. We would get mash.
Were there
mash or the commercial breaks would vary, and we would the same mash episode would be cut different ways.
Were there instructions to tell you?
No, there was a guy, Bob Clipping, bless his soul. He was a little guy sitting during the week and during the day. He would get the timings, and he would sit there and watch these films. Put a piece of paper into the reel as it was going by where he would cut, and then figure out like, oh, there's 6 minutes there I could cut. Oh, there's 10 minutes there I could cut, and then get to a point where he had cut enough out that we could play it for the commercial breaks. I had to put that back in.
There was a movie I worked on where we did the airplane cut of it, and they let me do it. And I mean, we'd been working on this movie forever, and I did the airplane cut in like about an hour, whereas everyone knew what the stuff to get out was. But I remember fighting over that, and I just find it so amazing that you just have a guy with a piece of paper in the office in the middle of the day. Did he like?
And probably,
and his instincts was
no
just
aesthetic reason for what he was cutting. He was just looking for the time. If
he's not even like saying like this is a lull.
It could be a major. I'm thinking. I hope maybe he didn't do this, but he probably did. A major plot point. Chunk out just because it was 6 minutes in length and he needed 6 minutes there.
I guess now that you mention, every once in a while, I remember movies I taped off TV. I'd be like, "Why did you make a commercial break there? That was ridiculous." And this would have been like '90s.
Oh yeah,
it's got to be more
ramshackle. When I was doing, one of my proudest moments early on when I had more drive and ambition, because as I've told you before, I was going to learn everything I could in TV and then go out to Hollywood, and I was going to work my way up the ladder and become Quentin Tarantino before he became Quentin Tarantino. I got to do my own local recap of Ice Station Zebra. They were going to play in 2 nights, and so we needed a recap. Like they did back on the network shows, they would do these, professionally made recaps. The part 2. Previously on, because sometimes these films would show sometimes several days apart. So they have these recaps done for them. So, and I guess ours was maybe a whole week apart, probably. And so, Ice Station Zebra was a long film. John Sturgis, Patrick McGowan, kind of playing a secret agent, prisoner type character in it. Great score by Maurice Jarre, I think, did the score, I think. But anyway, I saw that as a kid. I love that movie. It's a fun film, a lot of cool actors in it. And so I actually got to go in there and do the recap, and of course my recap was probably longer than it should have been, but we were already on 3/4 inch tape, so I was editing on 3/4 inch tape. Did the recap.
Did you watch? There's a great Sports Night episode where Jeremy he has to do his first baseball recap, and he's got it's supposed to be 30 seconds, and the whole day he has like a 10 12 minute one,
yeah.
And they're just like, you put all the first pitches, they were all strikes, and he's just like, you got to know where the rhythm the pitcher is going with.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably the same way. I go, I can't cut out this part with McGowan. I can't cut this part out with this or that.
So how long into? Well, first off, you started in '80, and was there any gap?
What do you mean gap?
Have you worked at WFIE your entire
I've been there since 1980.
Okay.
My part-time grandfathered in, so it counts as if I've been there since 1980, which I have. There was a short time. There was an economic. There was a little bump in the economic crisis. I forgot which one in the 80s. They laid me off. They let me go. After they just made me full time, and I was devastated, and I was kind of floating around trying to figure out what I was going to do, and then they called me back in. And I've been ever since.
How long? What was exactly the story of how did you get on air to start doing movie reviews?
Well, that's interesting because David James, one of the most beloved anchors of Evansville, which you and I are going to be doing a radio interview with him here shortly next week. He's still around doing stuff like that, and he always said, Ted, you ought to go on and be a TV critic for the station. And I just, being my lazy, procrastinating self, I just never got off my rear end to do it. And it's one of the regrets. I have a lot of regrets, and that's one of my biggest regrets. I could have started this much earlier, and I could have been, if I had started when I could have started, I might have been in a different market now. I might have had some books published or written. If I had pursued it and became full time. Because this is back when they were still full time review. Of well known. What was the is it Owen Gleiberman, Entertainment Weekly one? I just read his book. Was it a Movie Geek or?
Yeah, I mean that book came out like about a year or two ago.
Right, but he's about my age, and I'm reading how you got an Entertainment Weekly and everything, and I'm thinking that almost could have been sort of what I could have done if I had pursued it, because I had been off and on writing reviews and dabbling with movie reviewing and criticism. Jim and I both had been doing it since grade school.
Where were you being published?
Harrison High School paper, the U of E Crescent. Then there were some entertainment before News for You. There were some other attempts at an entertainment guide. I did a review of Osterman Weekend, Sam Peckinpah's last film, and things like that. So I've always been dabbling with it, and everybody knew I was this big movie fanatic. And I was encouraged, I should take advantage of it. I just never got around to it. Then I think basically what happened was, midday was going from half hour to an hour, and I think I know somebody's going to say this is wrong, but I think I was the one that came up with the day midday with Mike, because alliteration midday Mike.
Sure.
But we had a big meeting about how we're going to fill this show, how we're going to fill an hour.
Do you remember when this was?
See, I need to go back and see when that started. I'm really bad at.
I mean, a ballpark.
History. Huh?
Like a ballpark?
It's been going on.
Was this 90s, 80s?
No, it's not 80s. It's 90s, late 90s.
Because here's the thing. I remember you on TV. I don't remember how long ago. I just remember. Well, the joke in my head. It's funny because you have good taste, but I remember always thinking that Patton Oswalt bit about all film people in small towns learn what to like based on what their local film critic doesn't like.
Doesn't like.
Yeah, because they notoriously have the worst taste, and you're always mad that they had. You just assume as a kid, they're getting paid to watch movies.
Yeah, hopefully I wasn't that kind of.
Well, I mean,
and of course, and the reason I didn't do movie reviews for News for You, as you well know, it was a month. It still is. We have an our free entertainment guide, unlike with bigger cities, is weekly. It's not daily.
And we're too small a market to get press screenings.
It's monthly. I'm sorry, it's monthly, not weekly.
Right.
Leo and Louisville, all the different ones. They're all weekly.
Yeah, because I remember when I did some movie reviews when I was working at the theater. You sometimes review movies that by the time it got publication, they've gone.
Exactly. I said I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to because everything I want to review was mostly films that didn't stay long.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I could have did the blockbusters, and that's whoop you do. So I came up with the idea of doing let me do video previews, which I enjoyed doing almost the best because I didn't have to watch. This is like what's coming out on video, so I could write about what was said about it, or if I had seen it.
This is a News for You, but this is not Midday with Mike.
Yeah, News for You, and then I came up with video views, where the stuff I actually did review. That was out on video already, and then of course I started up some other columns too. And then of course that's where I like, who's this little Shane Hazen writing all this word? Anyway, so getting back to Midday with Mike, I came up. I go, well, guys, everybody's been telling me I should do this. What do we do? I do movie reviews, and I can come on, the show and review movies, and I came up with the name Cinema Chat and then of course it's kind of a guilty pleasure type thing. I use the word chat is important because I don't really do, as you well know, I don't sit there and do a really analytical breakdown, review, criticism, essay with Mike Blake on this. I do mostly, I get maybe a few words in about subtext or something like that every once in a while, but it's a chat. And of course, Mike likes to chat with me as opposed, it's funny when somebody fills in for Mike, they will let me they go, Ted, so you've seen this movie, tell us about it. And they shut up. And then all of a sudden I really have to work, whereas Mike will, keep me, he'll put a comment in or ask me another question or ask me a question that's totally off the script and throw me for a loop. But that's Mike for you.
Does he do that on purpose?
That's just Mike Blake.
No. I mean, there's something about
Mike's a very beloved icon. We got to be careful what we say here.
No, he's great. Yeah. I worked at the TV station briefly for a few months.
One of the funniest guys in the world.
No, I'm saying like that's a smart thing to keep someone on their toes.
Well, yeah. Every once in a while, let's say, he'll ask me. He hasn't done it as of lately, but he used to he'd throw a question that was. I gave him a rundown. I gave him a basic rundown. This movie with video. This is coming up with the dates and time by the USI or whatever. So I'm hoping he'll hit that. Just keep me paced on those beats, and that he's watching the time cues. I'm not even seeing the time cues half the time, but then he'll saying, well, what about that film what year was that film that played and that had Steve McQueen in it? And I'm like, and I lock up,
Well, I'm saying that like in theory it's a good thing, but you're worried about choking on.
Well, yeah, we thought we did it once. We did it one time. We thought about opening up for phone calls like we do for the Ask the Experts, but you're going to get somebody who goes in. Oh, what was the 1942 Oscar winner? And I'm just like, I can't call that up on my.
Well, this begs the question for me. What was it like going on for the first time? What got you the gumption? Because like it's one thing to say like I'm going to be a movie reviewer, but it's another thing to be like I'm going to go on TV. It's live TV, right?
Yeah, it's live. I do 2-3-minute segments.
Every time you've asked me to maybe go on, that is a factor. There's a reason like live TV. That's.
I guess I've been around it for so long, and
Did you make any kind of appearances before this?
Just maybe some kind of goofy thing or something,
Were you directing the newscast at this point?
Well, yeah, I think when I started Cinema Chats, I may have been phasing out of directing the newscast, but at one time I was the weekend director forever, and then I became the major 6 and 10 director on the weeknights, and so that occupied, and that was always those were interesting days. I did Marshall Yaki's last Sunday night newscast, I think, for Sunday night newscast. So I've seen some interesting things over the years, obviously, but I guess I was just used to it. I don't know if I had been on. I think I've been writing for News for You, so I was in the mode of trying to think about this stuff. I don't know. I just talked to Mike. It's a chat. It was informal. I looked at him. I didn't really think about it, and it's just now it just comes. And now, of course, I did this thing with Dan Katz on Friday. On Facebook, where we just talk about what's opening up, and Dan kind of plays my straight man to my lame comedy routine. That's like the Martin Lewis of Channel 14.
It's very. I mean, it doesn't seem like it gets high numbers, but I always watch them, and they are entertaining.
More people see that sometimes in the Midday with Mike, because you have to go out. I do have for those at all interested, I am archiving the Midday with Mike's on WFIE's website.
Oh, that's cool.
There's a tab for Cinema Chat. You could click on that.
How far back?
Well, it went back a long way, and then we had a corporate changeover, and so everything got kind of meshed. So it looked like when they changed over the websites and the digital stuff, a lot of the episodes got lost in the ether.
You don't have a.
I didn't back them up. I got a bunch. I got Bobby, my engineer, roll his eyes at this. I have a ton of them on DVCO Pro tapes. I used to roll a tape every time I went on the air. I'd call my dad. Dad, I'm gonna be on today, and I roll a tape, and then I go out there and do it. And usually I'm working Uh, uh, well, for a while I was doing office work, sort of a management, but I'm back on just day. I'm 40 hours more on the board now. So right now, when I go do a cinema chat, you're watching me running out there I'm running audio for that show.
You're kidding.
And then somebody has to cover my audio while I go out there and do
I
the
thought
chat.
you'd gotten way around.
No, we're TV is head counts and stations and coverage.
So when you started going on the air, you've been known forever as a guy that's obsessed with movies. But is this the point where you started having strangers come up to you and ask you opinions?
Well, yeah, I mean, eventually, slowly but surely, I would have. Usually with senior citizens, I'd be at McDonald's or somewhere, and they go, "Have you seen any good movies lately?"
Well,
just whisper in
when
my
you
ear.
when you do the impression, it always feels like you go to senior citizens. Is it something?
It's usually senior citizens. I don't see younger people asking me unless they just know me
Well,
already.
back in the day when
Well, the demographics for midday are senior citizens too. For the most part.
I guess that makes sense. I wasn't watching Midday at Mike myself as a.
And I go in spurts of trying to be a big promoter for it, and sometimes I don't. I go up and down with it. I'm getting, I'm at an age where it's like, I got less time on this earth than I used to, and I don't know how much I should devote it, but I'm trying to finally get off my butt and do some things that I should have done ages ago. Like, I'm moderating some panels at comic book shows, and I'm helping out with the film festivals, and I'm doing Q's and A's with people, and just trying to step it up a little bit. I actually wrote a couple of reviews for News for You for the first time a few issues back.
Really, what'd you do?
Local Hero and
Oh, this is you're doing the Road to the Victory series, the Victory Film Festival.
I'm curating a film series. Well, I've curated some film series already at the library, and now I'm doing one that ties into the Victory International Film Festival. But at Local Hero, and I did Rolling Thunder, Bob Dylan's Rolling Thunder, the Scorsese thing.
Okay.
It was kind of I had a really interesting couple paragraphs, but it wasn't enough space for
Wait,
it.
you're saying News for You randomly cut out a few paragraphs?
Well, I knew the word count, and in fact, by the time I started it, I was almost done. The word count was so small, I didn't realize. I was scared to go back into writing again. I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that because it's kind of a trade-off. I wanted an interview with a comic book creator in the News for You, and the editor said, "Yeah, I'll do that if you write me a couple movie reviews," because he just lost his reviewer.
Who is the?
I don't know, but the guy who left reviewer, I met him. He's a screenplay writer, and he knows the guy who did what was the African American film that won the Oscar?
Moonlight?
He knows the director. He's friends with the director.
The first guest on the show, Kevin, he has some connection with.
Yeah. And he wants to do a movie on Marciaki, and that's how I talked to him.
That's the connection. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the connection.
And so I was talking. I met him at the Peephole, and we talked, and we talked about the movies and stuff. And he left. He's left town, and so they needed a fill in. And so he goes, "Hey, if you fill in for me, I'll do that article you wanted, the comic book creator, because I'm also helping out. There's a comic book show we're doing at the Evansville Museum show every year now, and I'm trying to bring some really interesting creators in for that. So so it's supposed to be every Tuesday, every 2 weeks, midday, and then I do this Friday thing with Dan, but it varies. And then like if somebody doesn't show up on a Wednesday or a Friday, Mike will come up and say, "Hey, can you fill in?" So I have to do something off the top of my head. And like here, I mean, I could talk all night, as you well know, ever since we met. That's all we do. Is
Yeah.
we get together. We can talk until like the sun comes up.
Yeah, all night. I hopped in these things. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's no problem coming up with something off the top of my head. It's frustrating. I almost need to do it. I like to have more consistent so that people know, okay, Ted's going to be on this day at this time every week or every other week or whatever, so they know when, so that the younger people or more people would maybe tune in or record it, DVD or it.
Well, I mean, especially since you put it on the internet, that's the way.
Yeah,
people
but it's on the
see it
internet.
now.
Yeah, they're archived there. So.
Well, so I do want to talk about being in a small town. Like,
Is it a small town?
it's not a small town, but there's something
It seems
about.
like a small town, but it's not. It's too. I mean,
It's not. It's like 140,000.
I always want to memorize that because people ask me about that when I say
It's changed a few years since
the
it's.
frustration of what we don't have here, and that we have two campuses. We're not. I mean, are we as big as Lexington, or just right under Lexington, or right over Lexington?
Oh, I would imagine we're bigger than Lexington.
So I mean, it's just So that's
Well, but there's a certain character of the town which it's hard to describe without being negative about it. But because there's certain aspects of the town. When I leave town, I always sell to people that like we have a great music punk scene that like you would not know from being here. There's obviously a lot of cultural things, but for the most part, people in town, I think I can feel comfortable going to other places. We're either par or below par for when it comes to a movie that, or town aside being interested in movies. It seems like people are not deep dive. The internet changed it a little, but they're not deep diving into movies. And I bring this up just because it seems like there's kind of a circle of mentorship started when you were working at the book broker, where it seems like you would always flock to the person that was interested in movies, especially if they were younger, and you'd always just be like you'd want to pick their brain to know their interests, but you also would like to kind of mentor them in the film taste or curation even. Like when do you're squinting your eyes like you're not.
Oh, no, I'm trying to see where you're going with this.
No, I'm just saying what's the history of that, because I know one of the
Well, give me an example because I'm not sure.
well, one of the first ones I was thinking of was the editor at my first editor at News for You, Jay Ditzer. Like
right. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Jay, it's interesting because I did this with several guys. I actually it's not more. It's not such more. I don't even think of it as mentoring. I mean, that's if you want to use that word. I'm so enthusiastic and excited about things I discover and I love, and I just want to share. I've always figured out what the hell is my skill. Should I have been a filmmaker? Should I have been a music? I've played trombone and been band and stuff. Should I have been a writer? Should I did this, that, blah, blah, blah. Comic book person. I don't know. It's just so, and I'd become nothing. I'm, what is it, jack of all trades, master of none type thing. Even if that. So I always want to share this stuff. So there's a couple of things that always like one of my favorite things of all times is The Last Waltz. It's Martin Scorsese's The Last Waltz in the band. That's a whole other hour of discussing the band and Bob and Scorsese in this film and everything. But I made a habit of sharing this when the guy named Bill Wiest, we call him Wiesty, he started working in the back room at the book broker. And these young guys would come along, and I would go, "Have you seen this? Have you seen this? This is great." Da, da, da. And then we got together, and I would show Wiesty The Last Waltz. Jay came into my orbit. Him and some other friends were hanging out. We call them the book broker groupies, or there was a guy named Barry Benny that worked there. We call him the Barry Benny fan club. And Jay was like one of the guys. Actually, another guy in that group is now all of a sudden back in my circle. He's coming to all the library films. Ronnie, you met him.
Yeah.
He was part of that group. And Jay and I hit it off. And Jay was the one person. Maybe this is kind of what you're getting into. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but Jay always said, the thing about Ted was he never talked down to people. He just treated you, as another fan. On the level, you didn't feel like, you need to. I don't know what. I guess
that's why you and I both. I probably could have chose a better word than mentor, and you kind of balked at that.
Yeah. So I guess what we got together, and of course, as you know, my household history has not been of one that can have people come over because of the way my lazy habits of household keeping. So I brought The Last Waltz over to Jay's apartment where he was living with his mom and sisters, and we watched The Last Waltz one afternoon at Jay's house, and his mom pulled Jay aside and goes, "Who is this guy and how old is he?" Because Jay and I guess about 10 years difference, and now we got friends in my circle. Lucas, his father and
Lucas
mother,
Hardwick,
are my age.
Yeah,
but Lucas and I are real simpatico, and we do a lot of things together. Concert, big Nick Cave fans, and again, guess what? I shared with Lucas The Last Waltz, and he loves the thing. I mean, and then I started doing that with the American Martin Scorsese's personal journey through American film. I did that with the Tri-State Film Society people. I did that with Lucas and Kelly. I have a tendency to I just want to share this stuff, and it's stuff that maybe it's off the radar, they don't know about it, or it's something that I know they will like. I don't try to stuff it down them, and I don't think I've been too off course, and maybe every once in a while this way it's like, well, that wasn't that great, or I don't know if I really like that as much as Ted likes it or whatever, but I've been pretty lucky with that. But I mean, when I saw your stuff, you're writing News for You, I was like, who is this guy? And then somebody told me how old you were, and I was like, really? And I don't know what call or what article caught my attention, but I think the first time we actually
We met at Best Buy.
Best
I
Buy,
remember that,
yeah. You go, oh, you're the legendary Shane Hazen, though. You're the
No,
notorious Ted Haycraft.
I think I made a joke about Gary Groth, the editor of the Comics Journal,
Yeah.
and
Good old
publisher
Gary.
of Fangraphix, and I think you pointed that out. This is more of an interpersonal thing between us, but most of our contact is through your Facebook cinema chat stuff, or your Facebook group, and that's where I was kind of going with this.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, it still continues today. So I'm in Barnes and Noble. I guess I don't know. I don't know how long ago it was. When did I start when did I start with this Chat Cinema Facebook group?
Time on Facebook is
It used to be
does not matter.
you would put it in the messenger thread, and you would just put people in there, and then it was kind of hard to keep track of the conversation in the messenger thread, and so people going, make a group, make a group, make a group. So I finally did when I got I made a music group, I made a comic book group, I made a movie group. But I was in Barnes and Noble one day, the 50% off Criterion sale when I usually
The
camp,
glorious 50% off
yes,
Criterion
I
sales.
camp out there and make my list and check it twice, and there's this one guy in there, and all of a sudden he's stacking up the Criterions. I'm like, I need to talk to this guy. I'm just, or like, hey, or we just, started informally chatting, and we just again fell into this whole simpatico of directors and Criterion and this, and then I made note of his name, and Donaldson, it was Donaldson Bogert, yeah. And then same day, I left the store. I think I came back to buy another one or something, and another guy's in there stacking up. And I go, okay. And I started talking to him. It's Matt Helm. And and we're like just talking. And so finally, and then I met a few other people, at the theater, the Jonathan Helm, Chad Michael. I don't know Chad's last name, Michael. Sorry, Chad. And Jonathan Helm and all those guys. And all of a sudden, there's these little pockets of people that are really into film at different levels or different ways.
Well, that's actually kind of where I was going with this. I feel like this group. I mean, I don't want to get too into something that's a private group, but it feels like a microcosm of a lot of what film Twitter does right now, or a lot of conversations online about film. Where you and I have talked a lot about this, where basically someone presents an opinion. Someone says, "I like this movie," and instead of engaging with the opinion or arguing it, it's just someone says, "I saw this movie," or states on the fact, and it just doesn't seem like there's an interplay or a conversation with it.
Yeah, well, I think that could be for various reasons too. You're at work, or you can't sit there and write out your entitled analytical essay on it. At that
Well, it's
moment.
not so much I don't want a semiotics essay, but I just feel like there's this thing online that seems bizarre to me where people are just like proving they need to see movies.
Well, it is funny. I see this a lot with Jim. Jim posts a lot of cool things on his timeline, and you post something like a poster or something, or you might say a few words about it or something, and then people just go, "Yeah, I got that. I bought that," and it's like, okay.
Well,
thanks.
I'm not
I
trying.
mean, I guess it's just a validation that they support your taste, or they want to be part of it, but they don't have the time to go into why. I don't know. It is an interesting phenomenon.
Well,
and I found myself wanting to do it too, and I refrain. I try to stop, and I always made a point, like, people hit the like button all the time for articles I post, and I'm like, did they really read it?
well, they read the headline.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. I don't usually. Try to make a point. I don't hit the like button or whatever until I read the article, because the headline, there could be something really insightful and different than what the headline's portraying, and sometimes. So.
Well, I was doing this just because it just seems like, Kevin Smith really famously said that the internet apparently at a certain point just became about porn and people complaining about movies. So, but it always seems like there's a thing online of competition of seeing movies, and I know for me, one thing you and I have either commiserated on, or I kind of you influenced me on, is this thing of sometimes it's a burden, but it's like you have to see a movie just because movies or in the theater, because theatrical runs are limited, and you're going to regret not having seen it. And so we will see movies that we got a pretty good beat on it are going to be mediocre or not necessarily that good, but there's that possibility they could be good. Or there's always those movies that the greatest of any movie is the movies that surprise you. And like I feel like that's been something in the back that you've been kind of influencing me on, and you actually talk the talk on it. You actually see everything too.
Well, I don't. I
A
don't
lot.
see,
You see a lot.
but I do go to the theater. A lot of people go.
And you're also open whenever you haven't seen a movie, and you just like it's just this pained experience. Like I didn't see, I missed it.
Oh gosh, yeah. I still, my Clint Eastwood, started my obsession being a fan of Clint Eastwood films. I continue to be a Clint Eastwood fan, even though it was Leone that I, was the really instrumental in why I think I like those films so much. But it kept me on the Clint Eastwood path, and what an amazing career he's had. And I to this day I regret I didn't see Bird in the theater. It was played here. It was at Showplace East, and I had to go on the road for an Aces game for the television station. So I had a limited window to get into it, and I didn't get in to see it. And I'm like, because I was, made a point. I always been about. I want to see, certain directors, certain stars. I want to see all their films and not miss one of them, and especially on the theater. And it hurts me when I miss that opportunity. And like I think you were talking about this. Were we talking about it? I can't remember we talking about it. But as good as the system is at home, you still got distractions and when you're at the theater, you interact with you're there whether you're by yourself or with the other people. It's great. I miss, like you said, the Austin crowds are great on weekend nights. I haven't had. It's been a long time since I've been with a really cool crowd, and now I'm used to the movies I see. I'm the only one in the auditorium half the time, so now I'm used to just being by myself. And
You just saw Little Women last night. I had a good crowd with Little Women.
Yeah, there was a few people there, but that didn't really. I couldn't feel them or hear them. Now I did see Uncut Gems a few days ago, and it was a kind of a really weird and rowdy crowd, and I could hear them checking out. They couldn't stay with the last, but 2 hours was enough for them. And they were almost checking. I could feel them checking out the last 20, 30 minutes of the film.
I mentioned this on a previous episode, but I had the most perfect crowd for Uncut Gems. Like it was sold out. It was the AMC Lincoln Center, and yeah. So
Oh yeah.
I have trouble.
In fact,
imagining
it's been so long I missed that. I don't. I mean, that used to be the thing. That's. You get into the hoity-toity essays about cinema going. That's the community and being with people and in the dark, and there's something to be said about it. I mean, I don't want to get super highbrow about it, but it's all changing. Everything keeps on changing. The streaming services, the home video market, and your setups can be just almost better than what you're seeing in the theater, and everything else. So. Whatever works for you, you just got to cut your own path. I mean, going back to those, fellow film fans, it's like, it's so funny, and I got to really watch myself because you find a new friend or you talk to other people working, they're just love movies. They just I love it, but then you find out their scope of what they like is very small. Because they're just that's the kind of moviegoer they are. They see the blockbusters or the big marketing films, the big commercial films, or something that somebody recommended to them. But then you go, hey, well, did you see? Reminds me of this Ingmar Bergman film. They don't even know who Bergman is, maybe. Or did you see you saw Uncut Gems? Did you see the previous film, Good Time? No, I never even heard of it. Yeah, and you find out, and then it's frustrating because they're not at the level you're at.
Well, we've always had this conversation about the high-low. Like it's
Yeah.
it's hard to find. Maybe that's the problem in town. It's not that people like movies in town. It's just it's
Yeah.
hard to find the good high-low people who like high art and low art movies.
Yeah, and then you can start getting like that's always dangerous because they go, oh, Ted's high, hoity-toity, highbrow, and judgmental or egotistical. I don't want to, I don't want to be that. I could talk Ghostbusters and Star Wars and Marvel movies, just as well as but I want to also go over here and talk about the Safdie brothers or Terrence Malick or what Soderbergh's up to or whatever.
Okay. I know another struggle you always have in this market is you're always pushing with this theatrical window just because if the numbers go up, in theory, we're going to get better, smaller market or movies or smaller.
It's a business. and it's going to make money. And like the Steelers who run the show place, they're a mom and pop. They don't have a corporate backup.
So my point being, like, you always seem to be frustrated with we were talking about this earlier, the people that come out for the one indie movie a year.
Oh yeah, well, a bunch of my buddies, all the friends, they go, and I do it too. We go down to Nashville, the Belcourt Art House Theater in Nashville. We'll go travel out of our way to go see a movie. Then Eric Braesmith were bringing some films that didn't play. He brought in the Japanese film. Not Parasite and Burning, but the family that
Shoplifters.
Shoplifters. It didn't play here. It was on everybody's top 10 list. 2 years ago or whatever it was.
About a year ago, I think.
2 or 3 years ago, and then Eric brought it in at USI, DCP, stadium seating at the 4-1 in USI, and nobody, the same handful of people came out. But I'm thinking, where were these people that love this kind of film and want to see it? Of course, some of them had seen it already.
I saw it already. So
and some had seen it on streaming or home video. But here's a chance to see it on the big screen, and the bonus of a discussion afterwards. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. Some people don't. It's not their cup of tea, and that's another thing.
I might be one of those that it's not my cup of tea sometimes.
But we do. You and I do it all the time, so I don't understand.
Well, it's not that. It's I don't know. Sometimes
you don't want to. Well, because you get a couple of errant.
No. Eric Braesman's conversation.
Errant people.
Errant.
ERRANT. Some people just like to hear the sound of their voice and not really adding to the discussion. Is that what? Or
that's a little bit of it. There's yeah. Actually, that's probably as good a description as ever.
But that just you gotta take that. It comes with the territory. But I see a lot of people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Sometimes.
That's the exact phrase I was thinking.
I have to say, I don't want to. I guess I should toot my own horn here, but I think I'm bringing some interesting choices from my film series at the library, and it's a projected system. It's Blu-ray. It's something it's not state of the art, cutting edge. I'd love to do it at a theater or whatever, but I do a little homework for it, and I do opening statements. I try to lead a discussion afterwards, throw in some of my thoughts, and I help to hear what people thought of it. And it's just like the same 3 or 4 people showing up every time. And of course, I know people have jobs. They have night jobs. They have families. They have kids. I understand that, and that plays into it. But it'd be nice to see some of my so-called my friends that are really into film to come out and not only support it, but I like to get a discussion with them as opposed to trying to do it on Facebook or whatever.
Okay, well. To start to wind down, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned regrets earlier. How much? I mean, you mentioned you regret not, just the opportunities that you may have been able to get by either being in a bigger market, or you could have gone out to LA and worked in the film industry or stuff like that. Like, you always talk to me about this. How much do you really regret it? Because, I mean, the thing of it is, I remember you told me one time that someone in your family said that you're most content, or like you always come in with a bag. You bought something.
My father, I always would come home with I bought something, a new comic, a new magazine, a new book, a videotape, whatever. Always came home, never came home empty-handed.
You strike me as someone who's never bored. You strike me as someone that like always has like something to read with you.
No, yeah, it's amazing, and it's even worse now. No, my dad would say, there is no reason in the world for anybody to ever say they are bored.
Really?
My dad said that. I mean, I'm sure it's not.
And that's something that you clearly
took I clearly took that to heart. And I'm thinking, even I knew I was coming over to do this, and I don't know if we're gonna even have time to watch something. But I'm also thinking, when I get home, I got the Don Rosa book to read. I got that stacked over there. I was gonna try to start reading this graphic novel last night. Oh, then this movie opens up. Oh, the Golden Globes are Sunday night. It's just constant.
Right.
And people go, Ted, you have. And everybody gets on me I'm way behind on streaming television, but I just can't. I'm surviving right now without Wi-Fi at my house.
Right.
Everybody just cannot believe Ted Haycraft of all people.
I should have mentioned that earlier because I know when I tell people Ted doesnn't have internet at his house, there's a jaw dropping effect.
But
usually.
If you saw all the material I have in my house, I have enough Blu-rays and DVDs and books in my house right now that I will never be able to finish before I die.
My point, I guess, is that if you take away this idea that maybe you had as a kid that you want to be a filmmaker or how long you ever one, if you take that out, you seem like a relatively content person. I mean, sometimes
It's
you
all false. It's all facade.
no. I mean, I'm on, in the broader sense. Like,
I'm just very lazy. That's you gotta understand. That's one of my
yeah, but
best elements.
but there's certain things you've done in your life where you overcame that laziness. So
Yeah, and then when you do it, you go, "Oh wow, this really feels good. I should do more of this." And then I go back. Oh, I'll sleep for 12 hours again. But I know how. I mean, well, I've heard your stories. Your filmmaking stories. When I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can't. Shane's doing what I wanted to do." And then I hear all the horror stories, and I see your evolution of your career. I'm like, yeah, but I'm here. I am at home drinking my Diet Coke and enjoying my books and reading my movies, and not having to put up with the headaches of trying to get that next editing gig, or coming up with fine tune that script and trying to find a crew and get the budget going and da 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 da. That's So I don't know. Maybe I am content. Maybe I shouldn't be regretful. And I've gotten to do, and I said I've stepped it up a little bit lately. I've been trying to be more proactive, curating film series, getting involved with film festivals, moderating comic book panels, trying to put all this stuff in my head. I think it's so funny that initially before internet, I guess all of us we were walking live IMBD Google human in flesh.
yeah.
Now you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to retain it, but I'm trying to retain it and try to put it to use.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about, or any questions? Did you have any
I don't
questions for
know.
me?
Did we even accomplish what was the point of having me on? What was
I think this is.
what was the Ted Haycraft
I
mission?
am perfectly content with this so
Really?
far. Yeah,
I
this is
I don't know
exactly what I
how
wanted.
anybody would find this. And then my friends are going to say, we've heard this all before. This is a whole hour of Ted that we've heard 50,000 times.
One really thing I'm really liking about the podcast so far, that even if we, 3 people listen to it, is especially when I have friends on, I just like the idea of archiving, like a good just chat with.
Well, that's true. I guess you may archive these stories I have told over and over again, if they're worth archiving. That's the thing. But I do. I think I think you're going to have some interesting people coming up. I'm looking. I want to hear. I would have loved to talk to. Of course, I did get to talk to this one person quite a while that you're going to be interviewing here shortly.
Yeah.
But then again, sometimes you get these people you meet. Sometimes it's not the best thing to meet your heroes or talk to them. They all vary. Some are talkative and some are not. But I love. I'm down here looking at your movie collection, and I just want to go through it and talk to you about it. Like, well, why do you have that here? Or where's this? Why is this missing? Or why do you have this format? Why don't you have the upgrade Blu-ray of this? Blah blah blah. That could be a whole night here doing that.
Well, that's the glorious thing about this is the plan is that I should mention that initially the idea for the podcast was something we were going to do together, and then
And he dumped me. Hey,
well,
I'm a spurned lover.
well, yeah, I've done like 6 episodes, and I've seen you 2 times since then, and
I wonder why. Oh no.
no, and then I was in New York for half that time, and yeah, but the plan is that you're going to be on consistently.
I am? Okay.
Yeah, well, there's definitely going to be people that I already got in line that I want to hit up, and I'm like, I may just sit back and let Ted ask all the questions on this one. There's gonna be some coming up that hopefully that happens.
But yeah, it's just and like I said I don't know if I really our conversation today was kind of bouncing everywhere around, and I think we left some things unsettled a little bit, but that's okay because, like I said, who really cares? It might be very boring. My whole Leone obsession, Richard Lester.
I'm very proud that we got through this, and there's been like 5 mentions of Dylan. That Bob Dylan alone,
And we have we did mention Dylan, but there's one other person we haven't mentioned that.
And let's leave that one a mystery.
Okay, there is usually at the Showplace East lobby. The discussion always says Bob Dylan, Leone.
I was just not going to say it.
I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to say the ones we did mention. Dylan, Leone, yeah, I think that's Tarantino maybe, but I don't know.
Well, no, that's good. So
there is one person we haven't discussed.
We'll have to have another show with that. So
Yes.
Ted Haycraft, I want to thank you for being on the podcast.
Okay, Shane. Thank you.
Okay, Shane.
Shane, come back. Shane, come back, please.